What if I told you that one of the most quoted commands about money in church is often taught without its full biblical context? Bring the whole tithe, or you're robbing God. But here's the real question. Is that command actually written to you? Because in the next few minutes, you're going to see a detail about tithing that completely changes how most people understand it. Let's go straight to Scripture. Leviticus 27:30. A tithe of everything from the land belongs to the Lord. That phrase matters because it tells you exactly what was being tithed: crops, fruit, livestock, not income, not currency. Many will argue that crops and livestock were the currency during that time, but it simply isn't true. They transitioned from simple metals to actual coinage being the currency of Israel. And once you see what was actually being tithed, it raises a question most people never think to ask. Now look at Numbers 18:21. I give to the Levites all the tithes as their inheritance. The Levites didn't own land, so the tithe functioned as their provision. This wasn't random giving, it was structured. But here's what almost no one mentions. That wasn't the only tithe. In Deuteronomy 14:22-27, we see another, a tithe used for worship celebrations. Then in Deuteronomy 14:28-29, a third tithe every third year for the poor, widows, foreigners. And when you actually combine these, the number most people preach suddenly doesn't hold up. When you add it all together, it's closer to 20 to 30% annually, not just 10%. And this leads to a much bigger question. If this was the system God gave Israel, were Christians ever told to follow it? Before we answer that, we need to deal with the verse that puts pressure on people. You already know it. Malachi 3:8-10. Will a man rob God? Yet you are robbing me. That hits hard, but context matters. This was written to Israel under covenant law, a covenant defined clearly in Deuteronomy 28. Obedience equals blessing, disobedience equals curse. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Are Christians today under that same system? Because if we are, then Malachi applies directly. But if we're not, then applying it the same way might be a mistake. And the answer to that question hinges entirely on what Jesus did. So now everything comes down to this. What did Jesus actually do with the law? Jesus says in Matthew 5:17, I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. Fulfill means complete, bring to its intended goal. And if the law has been fulfilled, then the question becomes, what happens to commands tied to that system? Now look at Matthew 23:23. Jesus acknowledges tithing, but rebukes the Pharisees. You give a tenth, but neglect justice, mercy, and faithfulness. They were focused on percentages, but missing the heart. But here's the part most people overlook. At that moment, the law was still in effect. The cross hadn't happened yet. And once the cross happens, the entire covenant structure shifts. Romans 10:4. Christ is the end of the law for righteousness. Then Hebrews 7:12. When the priesthood is changed, the law must be changed also. Why does that matter? Because tithing was directly tied to the Levitical priesthood. No Levites leads to no temple, leads to no tithe system. And if that system no longer operates, then what replaced it? This is where most people expect a new rule, another percentage. But that's not what we find. 2 Corinthians 9:7. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not under compulsion. That's the opposite of enforced tithing, and what we see next pushes this even further. In Acts 2:44-45 and Acts 4:32-35, believers gave freely, some gave everything, others gave as they were able, but no fixed percentage is commanded, and this raises a deeper issue. Is God measuring percentages or something else entirely? Under the law, giving was structured. Under grace, giving is transformed. It's not about hitting 10%, it's about the condition of your heart. And that means something that challenges both sides. You could give 10% and miss the point, or give less and still be faithful. So here's the bottom line. Tithing was real, it was commanded, but it was part of a covenant system. Jesus fulfilled that system. And what remains is something deeper, not obligation, not to avoid being cursed with a curse, but willing generosity. So the real question isn't, do I give 10%? It's this: am I giving out of freedom or out of fear? If this challenged you, like, subscribe, and comment. Is tithing still required today? Let's have the conversation most people avoid.